Welcome to Chapter 1. We're going to start off here with 1-1 expressions and formulas. Just a few vocab terms to start off the chapter. We have a variable, and that's a letter used to represent unknown quantities. The most common ones are x and y, but we can use any letter that we want to, A through Z. We have an algebraic expression. That's an expression that contains at least one variable. Okay? So the difference there is that there are no equal signs. Okay, so it's not an equation because an equation has equal signs. There's none in an algebraic expression. We're going to talk a little bit about order of operations. It's a four-step method for solving equations containing parentheses, exponents, multiplying, division, and addition and subtraction. And then finally we have a formula, and that is a mathematical sentence that expresses the relationship between certain quantities. We've worked with formulas before, area formulas, volume formulas, stuff like that. So it's basically just how do we get from one quantity and transform it into another. So order of operations, the order that we do things in to solve an equation. Okay. Couple of different ways to remember it. You might have heard of PEMDAS before. PEMDAS stands for parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, and subtract. Growing up, I always was given this as the way to remember order of operations, the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, because that is just PEMDAS as well. It just had an acronym for it. So either way, PEMDAS or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, any way you want to remember it, just make sure that you remember it. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be evaluating algebraic expressions using order of operations. Okay, so you'll notice here evaluate m plus p minus 1 squared. This is an expression because there is no equal sign. Okay, there's no equal sign that makes it an expression, not an equation. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to take 3 and plug it in for m, and negative 4 and plug it in for p. That's going to be the first thing that we do. So instead of m, we're going to have 3 plus, instead of p minus 1, negative 4 minus 1. And then we're going to square it. Okay, so we are going to use PEMDAS. Okay, and we're going to go in the order that they want us to. First of all, parentheses. Okay, I do have a parentheses, so I solve what's inside the parentheses first. So negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. Then any exponents that I have, I do next. You notice how I have a negative 5 squared. So I need to square negative 5, which gives me a positive 25. Remember that when you square a negative, it turns it into a positive. Multiply, divide, I don't have any multiplication or division in the problem, so I can skip right over that one. It stays as 3 plus 25. Add and subtract, I can add and subtract from left to right. The only thing I have is an addition, 3 plus 25. That gives me an answer of 28. Okay, so we've got a couple more examples here. We're going to take these two expressions, and we're going to plug 12 in for m, and negative 1 in for q. So for this first one, I've got m plus 3 plus q squared. So instead of m, I'm going to put a 12. Instead of q, I'm going to put a negative 1. Okay. Parentheses first, 3 plus a negative 1 is the same as 3 minus 1, which is going to give me 2. Next is exponent. So I got 2 squared, which is going to give me 4. And I'm running out of room, so I'm going to come up here. And I don't have any multiplication to do, so I can go right to adding and subtracting. 12 plus 4 is 16. Second example, I've got m over 2q plus 4. Just the way I started before, I'm going to put a 12 in for m, and I'm going to put a negative 1 in for q. So I got 12 over 2 times negative 1 plus 4. Parentheses. The only parentheses I have is around that negative 1, and that's just because it's negative, so there's nothing to solve for in there. Moving on to exponents, there are no exponents, so I can skip over that. So I do multiplication and division at the same time. Okay, now This is one big division problem. I'm going to take 12 divided by the product of 2 and negative 1. I have to do the product first before I divide. So 2 times negative 1 is going to give me a negative 2. Then I can divide it. So 12 divided by a negative 2 should give me a negative 6. And then I don't have any more multiplication and division. I can go to adding and subtracting. I've got a negative 6 plus 4, which is going to give me a negative 2. This one I want you to give it a shot on your own. So we're going to evaluate a plus b squared times the quantity b minus a, and we're going to put 5 in for a and negative 3.2 in for b. So go ahead, pause the video, evaluate this expression, then go ahead and hit play and see how you did. Alright, so here we go. First of all, 5 goes in for a in these two spots right here, and negative 3.2 goes in for both b's. So the first thing we do is parentheses. So I've got this negative 3.2 minus 5 here at the end. That gives me a negative 8.2. Next, when I do exponents, I have to square the negative 3.2, and that gives me this 10.24. Multiplying divide, I have to multiply 10.24 times the negative 8.2, giving me a negative 83.968. So I'm at 5 plus a negative 83.968. I can turn that into just 5 minus 83.968. So I go to the adding and subtracting. 5 minus that 83.968 gives me 78.968. Our next example looks very different. It's one big fraction and there's higher exponents than squared. So I've got x to the fourth minus 3 times w times y, and I'm going to divide that whole thing by the quantity of y cubed plus 2w. And I'm given that w is 4, x is negative 3, and y is negative 5. So the first thing I do, the same thing that I did before, all w's get replaced with 4s, all x's get replaced with negative 3s, all y's get replaced with negative 5. So instead of x to the fourth, I'm going to have negative 3 to the fourth. Instead of 3 times w times y, I'm going to have 3 times 4 times negative 5. And on the bottom, instead of y cubed, I'm going to have negative 5 cubed. Instead of 2 times w, 2 times 4. Okay. So if you look inside the parentheses, there's no operations to do there. So I can skip over the p. Next, I have to do any exponents. So I have to do negative 3 to the fourth and negative 5 to the third. Well, negative 3 to the fourth is 81. So I've still got the rest of the top part here. And on the bottom, negative 5 to the third is negative 125. Okay, you'll notice when we take a negative number and raise it to a positive exponent, we get a positive answer. When we take a negative number and raise it to a negative or odd exponent, you get a negative answer. Okay, so negative to an even gives us positive, negative to an odd gives us negative. I don't remember if I said that right the first time. So negative to an even gives positive, negative to an odd gives negative. Okay. The next thing we do after exponents is multiply and divide. So I need to multiply 3 times 4 times negative 5 on the top. So 3 times 4 is 12, times a negative 5 is negative 60. So on the top I've got 81 minus a negative 60, and I'll change that here in a second. On the bottom I've got 2 times 4, so I've got negative 125 plus 8. So instead of minusing a negative, I'm going to turn that into adding, because that's what we do there. Okay. 81 plus 60 is 141. Negative 125 over 8 is a negative 117. Okay, I can pull the negative out front, and also if you'll notice, I can pull out a 3 from the top and the bottom. Okay, so if I divide the top and the bottom by 3, I will get, with the negative out front, a 47 on top and a 39 on the bottom. So my answer will be negative 47 over 39. Last thing we're going to be doing is using a formula. Okay, so now we take the formula for the volume of a cone, which is 1/3 pi r squared times h. Okay, that's always the formula for a cone. And we're going to use that to approximate the volume of a tornado. Okay, so this is what the tornado looks like. Okay, it looks like an upside down cone. So I'm going to draw that here. So a cone like this. This is my tornado. It's got the wind blowing around it. Okay, it's very strong, very deadly. Okay, and these are the dimensions of the cone. Okay, this measurement right here, that is 75 meters. Okay, that would be what's called our radius. Okay, because it's from the center of the circle to the edge. And the height of our tornado is 225 meters. Okay, those two pieces of information are all we need to find the volume of this tornado. So I bring down my formula. My radius is that 75 meters, and my height is that 225. So plugging in 75 for R and 225 for H, now I can solve and find the volume. Okay, parentheses are first. If you look inside the parentheses, there's no operations to do, it's just numbers, so I can move on. The exponent is next. If I square 75, I get 5625. Okay, and then there's no more exponents, so I can move on. And then I can just multiply these all together. Now, you don't want to type in 3.14 for pi. Okay, we want to use the actual pi button, which we can find pi by hitting second, and then the button that has an upside down looking V. It's on the right side towards the top. So if we type in 1/3, which is just 1 divided by 3, we type in the pi button, which is second, and then that upside down V button on the right, times 5,625 times 225, we get that the volume is roughly 1,325,359. Okay, and we're talking volume in meters, so it's going to be cubic meters. Last example here, we're going to have you do this on your own, but we've got the volume of a rectangular prism, which basically just looks like this. Okay. It's a cube with the base of a rectangle. The volume is equal to length times width times height. Okay, and we're going to find the volume of a rectangular prism with the length of 4 feet, a width of 2 feet, and a height of 3.5 feet. So go ahead and pause the video, plug those numbers into our formula, solve, and get our volume. All right. So if I plug 4 in for L, 2 in for W, and 3.5 in for H, I get that the volume is equal to 4 times 2 times 3.5. If I go through the order of operations, inside the parentheses, there's no operations, so I don't have anything to do there. Exponent, there's no exponents to do, so I can skip over that. And now we're at the multiplying and dividing. We can multiply straight across. 4 times 2 times 3.5 gives me 28. And then the adding and subtracting, there's no addition or subtraction in the problem. So I'm done at 28 cubic feet.